Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us for our October monthly meeting of the North Dakota Local Food Development Alliance. I'm excited to see some new faces with us today. We have Kayla Carlson from NDSU Extension and Jacob Davis from he was the Tribal Programming Director of Prevent Child Abuse North Dakota. So we're going to start with introductions. So I will start. I am Stephanie Bloomhagen. I'm the Executive Director of FARMS. We're a nonprofit that provides education to grow sustainable agriculture in North Dakota. We have workshops and courses to help farmers improve their use of sustainable methods and grow their farm businesses. And we work to increase access to local food in North Dakota. And I am the North Dakota Local Food Development Alliance board chair this year. And I'm going to just go down my screen, which happens to be Felicity. You're next.
Okay. Do you want me to give it a short introduction or a long one? Because I saw later on you had
short introduction now, long introduction later.
Okay. My name is Felicity. I'm the newly appointed North Dakota Local Food Development Alliance coordinator through AmeriCorps. So I'll be working with trying to just managing membership and outreach and kind of communications and marketing side of it. So that's the short version.
Great. Thank you, Felicity. Kayla, I'm so glad you are with us today. Would you introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you for having me. So my name is Kayla Carlson. I'm with NDSU Extension, Cass County. I work as the Urban Extension Agent. I've been with Extension for, a little over 5 years now, and this position is a newer position. I've been in this position for about 1.5 years, and it's really a pretty fluid position as far as meeting the needs of the county within a few sectors. And one of the areas we're really seeing a need is local food. And so I work closely with Cass Clay Food Partners and some of our community gardens. And I was telling Stephanie, I was at the Governor's Main Street Initiative a couple weeks ago conference and saw that there was the Local Food Development Alliance meetings that you guys had. So I was excited to join. So thank you for having me.
We are glad to have you. Karen, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm just checking to make sure, yes, okay. This is Karen Ahrens. I'm the coordinator for the Creating a Hunger-Free North Dakota Coalition. I'm a board member for the North Dakota Local Food Development Alliance, and I'm really glad you're all here today. Hi, everyone.
And I was so glad you joined our webinar earlier today, Karen.
The webinar was great.
Wonderful, thank you. And next we have another board member, Molly McLean.
Hi, everybody. I'm Molly. Are we doing introductions? I'm sorry I joined late.
Sorry.
Molly McLean, I'm the secretary for NDLFDA and local foods advocate.
Wonderful. Jill Hawkinson, I was so glad you helped with interviews. Would you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Jill Hawkinson. I'm a community development specialist with Rural Development, and I sit on the board as an advisor. I am also the beginning farmer rancher coordinator right now for the next couple years for a 4-agency task force to try to increase participation of beginning farmers and ranchers in our USDA program. So happy to be here. Thanks, Stephanie.
And I have Jacob Davis next. Thank you for joining us, Jacob. Would you introduce yourself?
Yep. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jacob Davis. I'm a citizen of the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa, and right now I serve as the Tribal Programming Director for Prevent Child Abuse North Dakota, where I work on 2 main projects, which is the CDC High Obesity Project within the state, and then the North Dakota Maternal Infant and Early Child and Home Visiting Grant.
And Fame. Fame has been an intern with Farms in the past as well. Would you introduce yourself, Fame?
Hi, Fame Turner Henry, social worker and local foods advocate in Grand Forks, North Dakota. Glad to be here. And welcome, Felicity.
And Jamie Good, would you introduce yourself?
Sure. Jamie here, North Dakota Department of Agriculture, local foods specialist for the state.
Thank you, Jamie. This next, and Susan Sampson Liebig, or Liebig. Would you introduce yourself?
People hear me?
Hi,
Can anybody, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. I've been having technical difficulties last few Zoom calls, but at any rate, yeah, I'm Susan Sampson Liebig, and I'm a soil quality specialist for the USDA, the Natural Resources Conservation Service here in North Dakota. And our focus, our focus is really on soil health and doing studies on soils and in urban as well as ag. So, but it's mostly a soil health focus. Glad to be here today.
We're glad to have you. And Zoom keeps switching the name. Oh, great. Okay. Keith Knutson, I think you're next. And I'm glad you could join us.
Hello. I'm glad to be on. You can hear me, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Yeah, Keith Knutson at Dakota College. I'm an instructor in the horticulture department and also department chair for the ag and horticulture departments. Instructor mainly in the areas of vegetable production, hemp production, aquaponics.
Great. And Kayla said she's here because of a presentation at Main Street, and I'm hoping that was maybe your presentation. Who else? Okay, this says Ellen Duffy. Are you Ellen Knutson from our board?
Yeah, Ellen Knutson Duffy with River Road Gardens. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Ellen. And Heidi Ziegenmeyer. Glad you could join us. Would you introduce yourself?
Sure. Sorry, I'm a little late. I'll turn my camera on too. Let's see. There I am. Oh, hello. Heidi Ziegenmeyer. I'm the land grant director at Chanhassen Community College. We have like an extension office there, but for the tribal college.
Okay. Holiday, you made it. I'm so glad.
Thank you. It was quite a gauntlet there to get through. I forgot that you have to keep registering every time, and good to see you there, Heidi.
Hi.
Welcome. Very nice. I'm Holiday.
And
USDA. USDA Rural Development, Native American Outreach Coordinator.
Great. Mary, would you introduce yourself? Mary from NRCS.
Hi everyone, my name is Mary. It's good to see you all. I am the state conservationist for USDA NRCS, Natural Resources Conservation Service, and work very closely with Holiday and some others on soil health and food health. And so it's really exciting to be a part of this. Thanks.
Thank you. And I have one more person on the phone. 228-5489. Would you introduce yourself?
That's Keith, because I can't seem to to be able to speak on Zoom for some reason right now. So I'm on the phone also.
Wonderful. Is there anyone else who is here who didn't get to introduce themselves? Okay. I am so glad at the great turnout today. So happy to have you all here. Well, You have so can you all see the agenda? Am I sharing my screen? Okay.
Yes.
So you have the agenda before you. We're going to meet Felicity, our new coordinator. We're going to hear from Jacob about the CDC High Obesity Prevention Project and how it relates to Indigenous food sovereignty. We're going to talk about farm to school grants that are now open. Do some thinking about what we should focus on over the winter. Continue to review our local food plan, and of course hear our member updates. Are there any corrections or additions to the agenda? Could I get a motion to approve the agenda?
This is Keith. I move to approve the agenda.
And a second?
This is Mary. I will second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. Agenda approved. And we have minutes from both September and August. I sent them just this late last night. So this is September, and we're going to approve both sets at the same time. The September minutes and the August minutes. Does anybody have any corrections or additions to the minutes? Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Karen Ahrens moves to approve the minutes with thanks to our secretary.
Absolutely. May I have a second?
Keith Knudsen, second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. And we will continue to try to post minutes on the website so that if you ever need to go back and see an archive of the minutes, they are there. Okay, so Felicity, so we have, the last 2 or 3 meetings, we've been talking about recruiting and hiring a coordinator. And I am delighted to introduce Felicity Merritt as our new coordinator. Felicity, would you tell us a little bit about yourself and your interest in local foods in this position?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start broad. I grew up in Oregon in the Willamette Valley near Eugene. And I was always, my family doesn't have a farming background, but I was always around a lot of horticultural crops, specifically a lot of berries and fruits that we grow out there. But I decided after graduating high school to kind of take the science route. I went to Dickinson State here in North Dakota, and I got my degree in biology, focusing on plant sciences. And I was very interested on the genetics of plants, and especially like crop plants and agricultural plants. And then I decided to pursue my master's degree in plant breeding and genetics at NDSU, which is where I currently am working in the potato breeding lab. So we work with creating new varieties specifically for North Dakota, but also broadly for the United States and the world market as well. But I guess the longer I spent in kind of the academic realm, I noticed this tendency to become really fixated on what you're researching and what you specifically are studying. And so I made an effort to kind of look into what can I do to help fight hunger here and local foods and the food system more broadly. Because I've always been interested in kind of the broad idea of, you know, world food security, but I just became more and more interested in what I can do where I am. So that kind of led me to farms, and this past summer I did an internship with them, working with the Red River Market in Fargo, and that gave me a really good opportunity to kind of look into broadly, you know, the whole picture of the economic side of it and the consumer side of it as well. So I really enjoyed that. So then I applied for the coordinator position at the NDLFA. And so I'm really excited to kind of start working with local foods, you know, more hands-on, and, you know, kind of coordinating, doing some messaging and, you know, organization and outreach. So that's me.
Wow.
Does anyone have any questions or comments?
This is yeah, that's what I was gonna say too. Welcome aboard.
Okay, very impressive. I think we're very fortunate to have you.
Well, thank you. I can be a little long-winded, so thanks for listening. And if you do have questions or want to chat or whatever, I can put my email into, and I'm sure I'll be in the process of kind of reaching out to most of you guys individually about, you know, different aspects as I get going.
Yeah.
Right. And Karen says, welcome Felicity in the chat. I also wanted to let the group know that since I knew we were going to be hiring a coordinator, I set up an email address through Gmail, partially so that there would be a separate Google Drive just for North Dakota Local Food Development Alliance. But Felicity and I can talk about this. That may also be a way that you can contact Felicity. And it is ndlocalfood@gmail.com. So that is a functioning email address right now. And I will put it in the chat. We have another guest with us today, and that is Jacob Davis. Mary with the NRCS forwarded Jacob's contact info, and I believe that they have been in some conversations about food sovereignty initiatives. And Jacob, I believe you and I have met previously when Farms was recruiting interns through the CDC High Obesity Prevention Project and your connections with someone at NDSU, I believe. Anyway, we would love to hear more about this project. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Jacob.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me. I'm very new to this realm. Like I said, the other part of my job is focused on maternal, infant, and early childhood home visiting. Prior to that, I worked on different projects focused on Indigenous elders and Indigenous elder justice issues. So the CDC HOP, the CDC Centers for Disease Control High Obesity Program, funded North Dakota State University approximately about 2 years ago. So we're starting our third year this year of a 5-year grant. And primarily, I attached the CDC HOP informational sheet that gives that kind of broad overview and of what our project is, the purpose of our project, and then some of our logic model pieces and how we're going to achieve those outcomes over the course of our 5-year grant, and then even beyond that in terms of some of those longer term ones. So right now, I think a lot of the work that we're doing, since we're working within two counties, Rolette County and Sioux County, and primarily focusing on the indigenous populations within those counties, it's really about establishing that trust with those communities. And so for the first 2 years, we've been developing that by establishing like coalitions and stakeholder groups to help us have those types of conversations that look at utilizing like a collective impact strategy. And so what's really exciting about this year is that a lot of the conversations due to what's happening nationwide with COVID and food security has really allowed us to examine food sovereignty and traditional food pathways to an extent that we weren't previously able to. And so in terms of the CDC, that really isn't one of the objectives that they're prioritizing, as much as like the connections to the everyday destinations through physical activity to help lower the obesity rate, and then healthy nutritional standards and policies that are adopted or adapted within the communities we're working within. But taking that more holistic approach about integrating, you know, what we're trying to do with our strategies, our programs, and our community partners has allowed us to have more in-depth conversations about not only some of the ramifications of historical trauma on food systems, but, you know, moving forward, what types of relationships do we have to establish to get back to some of those traditional foods that we once relied on. So it's been a lot of work that has an emotional toll, just being a member of one of the communities that we're working within. But it's very meaningful in terms of just looking at those conversations as being, sorry, my son is in the background. It must be enjoying a book. But yeah, I think a lot of the conversations right now are very community driven and looking at food sovereignty from that aspect of more of a food security space. And I know with my tribe, Turtle Mountain, we were able to conduct a food sovereignty assessment, which is also leading to food code development. We're establishing a new, I don't know if people are familiar with FDIPR, but the commodity program. It used to be the commodity program. They rebranded to the FDIPR program. And then also looking at doing greenhouses and the potential for what that could create in the community in terms of food security. And were able to allot CARES Act funds to be able to create a butcher shop for local people to be able to utilize to get meat processed. And so there's tons of potential and things that are happening right now in the communities to reestablish some of that connection to the traditional foods. There are some other tribes within the state that are looking at seed banks, and the larger goal of this grant is to establish those connections between multiple tribes to look at creating those, reestablishing those food pathways to what some of the tribes have access to that others might not. And so it's really exciting work. Like I said, it's oftentimes emotional because you do have to acknowledge and address that history, especially not only the federal relationship between the federal government and tribes, but also the state relationship. Because if you're familiar with the damming that happened, it did create a lot of pain within tribal communities, especially related to some of the access to their food. So within Sioux County, for instance, they did have a damming that created a flooding of a lot of their orchards and some of those traditional foods along the riverway were lost. And so trying to help them reestablish that is also one of our missions of our grant, is to look at that and the impact that it had, and then have the conversations for healing so that we can address and adjust accordingly. So there's a lot that I could cover. I don't know. It's probably easier if there's any questions that you might have that I can attempt to answer.
When did you begin, Jacob?
I began with this project, working on it roughly 2 years ago. So NDSU, because they're the main recipient of the grant, they subcontracted with me through Prevent Child Abuse North Dakota, just because of my relationship within. I've worked at a national, regional, state, and then also tribal level with the tribes that they're involved with. And so as a project lead within the grant, I also serve as a tribal liaison and have that historical knowledge about federal Indian policies that has helped us look at it from a different trauma-informed lens, like through a trauma-informed lens, which is necessary when working with tribal communities.
Are you Native American, may I ask?
Yes, I'm from Turtle Mountain.
Turtle Mountain. All the Davises up there.
Yep, I'm one of them Davises.
Well, I know that Heidi Ziegenmeyer and with the land grant program at Spirit Lake and Farms, me, have written and received a Beginning Farmer Rancher Development Program grant to do some work so figuring out how to create a food sovereignty program through the tribal college at Spirit Lake. So I'm certainly excited to hear from you, Jacob, and I bet Heidi is too. I'm not sure what questions I have at this point because we haven't really started our work yet.
I know that we have one of the initiatives that I'm hoping to get off the ground this year is, I noticed that a lot of the tribal colleges and some of our tribal partners within 4 of the 5 tribes within the state have gardening initiatives that they implemented over this last summer that were pretty successful. And so I reached out to some of those garden coordinators and then food sovereignty directors, and Turtle Mountain's in the process of hiring a food sovereignty director. We led the gardening effort this last year to try to form indigenous food sovereignty collective within the state. And so I think that's one of the goals for this year, is to help establish that and develop that framework, so that when we're looking at gardening efforts and things like that, that we're looking at it from more of that holistic perspective of how can we utilize seed banks, how can we start researching traditional foods and what can be grown in like the hydroponics techniques, the aquaponics techniques, what works well, what doesn't, so we can learn from each other and start having those larger conversations related to the creation of a tribal food system.
Yeah, I think that sounds amazing. I don't know if you reached out to our community garden managers here at Lake, but I haven't heard of that. So I'm guessing maybe not, but we'd love to be part of that collective.
I think I tried. There's been some
turnover.
Yes, two people, I think, in like a 2 or 3 month span. So yeah. I reached out to both people. I don't have the new contact, but if that's something you'd want to be involved with, Heidi, I could just reach out to you and then we can.
Yeah, that'd be great, because I oversee that, and the garden manager is kind of a part-time thing, kind of full-time, kind of part-time, and I'll be looking eventually in a year or two for funds to continue it, because the grant will be ending that person is paid on. So I'm probably more of a stable figure for that project than.
Oh, Yeah, awesome. I know we've had conversations about sustainability is a huge thing, and with our
Yeah.
project, we take an empowerment approach, which is really focused on looking at sustainable options within the communities we're working within. And one of those conversations is surrounding the FMAP funds and that reimbursement through Medicaid and how that could be used and applied for health promotion efforts, including something like gardening. And so there are conversations that we would benefit from meeting like intertribally, just to have that combined voice to be
Yeah.
able to create that framework, and then get that allowable through those funds once they start getting redistributed back to the tribes if the legislation passes.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that at all. So I'm intrigued. I'm interested. That definitely sounds like something to talk about with all this. Thanks.
There's also the
Jacob,
option.
I take it you're working with Sheldon Thomas up there at Turtle Mountain?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, he's on our coalition, and he's an active member of the coalition. I know he's really focused lately on the hemp production and getting that off the ground. And then, like I said, they're reestablishing, the FDIPR program is moving to a new building where it'll be attached to, in close proximity to that butcher shop, and then that butcher, and then also our meat processing, and then also the commercial kitchen is another idea that they're trying to find funding for, that will all be in one centralized location.
Sheldon sent me the Department of Agriculture plan that he has produced. I'm really excited about the new food distribution facility that's being built. I think they had a groundbreaking last week or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be, from the sounds of their plan, what it sounds like they'll be doing is similar to what Spirit Lake has in that grocery store kind of setup, which seems to be the model now for most of the FDIPR programs to model after. And so I'm excited to see that, and then just the potential that the butcher will have in that area, and with the commercial kitchen, to provide some workshops around healthy nutrition, traditional foods, and food processing, I think is just huge. So I'm really excited about the work that they're doing there. And then I heard that MHA Nation was looking at developing a processing plant, which then means they could be a distributor potentially for the USDA if they could get past the regulations and become certified, which then establishes a direct chain within the state to our FDIPR programs. And that's
MHA's
really exciting.
greenhouse project is really exciting. I don't know whether you've looked into that yet. The Dutch model of all-weather greenhouses that Chairman Mark Fox is pursuing.
Is that the one where they're, rather than building, they're not considered permanent structures because they rotate on giant concrete slabs?
Well, I thought they were permanent structures, so
there's federal funding guidelines. The federal funding guidelines, I think, don't allow for, there's so much regulations when it comes to federal funding, but
ridiculous.
Permanent structures development is wording that they often use, that you can't develop permanent structures. So the way that they were trying to navigate around that was that structures that were on pulleys, like that could actually over giant concrete slabs, that could then be pushed onto another concrete slab, so they're not permanent. And I was like, that's amazing, because that's, working in that gray space, which sometimes we need to get things done.
It's crazy.
Well, Jacob, would you put your contact information in the chat box? Make sure that people can reach you. And thank you so much for sharing about this program. I think there's opportunity for lots of connections here. And thank you, Mary, for passing Jacob's contact information on to me. Paul Overby joined us, and so I want to give Paul an opportunity to introduce himself. You're there you
There
go.
we go. Hi, everybody. Sorry for the late thing. I got busy over at the farm and went, whoa, I'm running late. Paul Overby, I'm the Northern Plains RC&D Council President, and we're working on a couple of different local food projects in northeastern North Dakota.
Wonderful. So I also wanted to make sure we had time to talk about the Farm to School Grant RFA that is now open. This comes open every year from the Office of Community Food Systems, and they are having webinars on Tuesday, November 10th and Friday, November 13th. And so I copied the resources into the agenda. So this is an opportunity to improve and grow our farm to school programs in North Dakota. And as a coalition, you know, we could really help broker connections and you know, ensure that somebody or several somebodies in North Dakota are able to access these funds to grow farm to school. So Jamie and Karen and I have sort of been just touching base about this via email. And I know, Mary, you have worked with your own farm. I think you've, I know you were thinking about farm to school. I'm not sure where you're at with that.
Yes, my son did the school contract, and of course the second year was last year, so it wasn't very successful with the schools shutting down, and then they weren't really open kind of during the summer and even during the beginning of the school year this year. And by the time they reached out for ideas, we'd already taken everything to market or processed it. But our contract continues, and we will again try next spring, early spring, when we get some things out of the high tunnel, and then through their summer program, and again in the fall. Cucumbers were really popular. The tomatoes, we had to do a little education that tomatoes don't have to be red, and that some of the best little grape or cherry tomatoes are green but tasty, or kind of purplish but tasty. So it's been a journey, and I hope to continue it. But what we've learned along the way is there's a lot of education to be done. We need to connect with the food, with the kitchen, the cooks, the people that are preparing the food, not just the people that manage the contract or the grants to do farm to school. And so we've got a ways to go, but it's a beginning.
Do you have any ideas or insights on needs for a successful farm to school program? Like if people were to pursue a grant, what, you know, do we need a person to coordinate
Yes.
with various schools and farmers?
We need it's the same things that we observed when we've come together in the past. We're missing processing because lots of times the farmers at the farmers market grow the produce, but unless they get it to the right approved processing place, the schools can't accept it, so that the schools are limited on what they can accept. So processing, I think delivery is another gap that we have for school to farm. I look at our farmers markets here in Bismarck, and there's a lot of food grown, but again, farmers, they grow the food. What they aren't really good at is taking the time or having the time to box it up and get it to the schools. So yes, a person or food hub or something that would make it easy for farmers to deliver the food. Something, even an app Stephanie, I think you and I talked about this, having an app that they could go on and say, I have this many pounds of carrots this week, or this many pounds of whatever I have, and shoot a picture of it. And then the schools start incorporating in how they do their menus. Food doesn't always grow on schedule. You think tomatoes are going to be ready in the high tunnel by June, and they're not growing until the end of August. So there's a lot of need for flexibility, but processing and delivery are two big gaps that I think we have in this state.
Jamie, do you have anything you'd like to share? You've, through the Department of Ag, you've been engaged with Farm to School in various ways.
So, well, thanks, Stephanie, for calling me out there. I guess I'm just, kind of listening. I think, that Mary's certainly correct. There's certainly a lot of, education that can be done. And, the biggest thing is that I see is just, like I said, is getting those people together, getting those folks in the room. And one approach that the Department of Ag is taking, now this is not a farm to school grant, but I wrote it in for the specialty crop block grant that we just got awarded here 1st of October, is taking more of that school education approach. And I was working with Deb England. They do some back to school workshops every August, and getting in front of those food service directors at those back to school workshops and kind of providing them with a toolkit, I guess you could call it that. I'm envisioning kind of like a binder that might have, some documents in it, go over those documents with those food service directors and just kind of help them understand, just like what Mary said, is, yeah, we're going to try to get, we're hoping for this date, but things can happen. And how do you, as a food service director might, make adjustments and things like that. So, like I said, that is not a farm to school grant project. That's a specialty crop block grant project that I'm excited to sort of get started on, work on, to try to, make that connection. Because I feel like we've done a lot of work on the farmer end to try to get farmers geared up, moving towards, farm to school. But until you have that willing participant, that willing buyer on the other end, you could do a lot of work and not get anywhere. So we're really trying to look at that, maybe at that buyer side, and you try to attack it from another angle. Like I said, there's lots of things with this. I think the farm to school grants could really help a lot of programs locally. I do acknowledge what Karen said, is that, I don't think the USDA is going to award North Dakota 10 grants by any means, but I think if there could be a couple schools, a couple areas that could get together and develop a really good, solid project that might start to have some regional impact, I could see those getting a good look and potential getting funded. I feel sometimes we, as a group, try to build these projects up really big, and they get really hard to manage because we have so many moving parts, so many players there, that we all have our own little part that we're trying to get to. But I think if we could break it down a little bit and do some more, more targeted, I'm thinking like, the one that comes to mind is Bismarck Mandan. That could be a really great case study. We've got a person hired now that's dedicated to do some of that work. There could be some really great models developed from, putting a little more funds towards a project like that could be utilized, other places. We do have some great success stories, up in Bottineau. Bottineau's doing some great things, the school district in Bottineau where Keith is at, and Keith is very aware of that. So not that we don't want to work together, because I think we should work together and we should support each other's projects, but I just caution us not to get too big, because that can get complicated as well. So sorry, Stephanie, you gave me the floor, and I'll step away now.
And, you know, NDLFDA can certainly participate in any projects by, you know, playing a coordinating role. We're kind of an information hub and a place where we can connect and share each month. So, you know, if organizations are looking for that sort of partner, Farms provides education for farmers. So we have access to farmers and could play a role in educating farmers and sharing information. So I'm always open to collaboration as farms. You know, I think we make progress when we are able to collaborate and work together. I think Deb mentioned, and I apologize, I haven't had a chance to really delve into this grant yet, but I believe there is a match requirement of 25%, she mentioned, so that can be a limiting factor for some organizations.
Yeah. And Stephanie, I'm glad you mentioned that, because yeah, certainly, yes, the match is a big thing. I mean, it could be like a you know, like a in-kind kind of a match, you know, like salary hour, you know, percent salary, things like that. But yeah, definitely have that figured out ahead of time, because we were working on a grant last year, this farm to school grant, and thought we had the match all figured out, and right at the very end it wasn't there, so we had to pull our applications. So just, yeah, that's a good point, Stephanie, for that, for sure.
Karen, was that you who, somebody started to say something?
Yes, this is Karen, and thank you. For at least 10 years, we've been trying to bring farm to school, and there went several years when North Dakota was one of the few states that was not receiving this grant. And so I know that persistence is important in these types of projects, but so is communication. And over the years, I can agree with what Mary said in hearing the same thing, as I've been in these spaces for that time, in help with processing, delivery, aggregation, are all needs that seem to prohibit us from moving forward and sustaining the momentum. And so I thank you for adding this to the agenda and for this space where we can discuss. And when we are thinking that we get too big, it's also that we need to work together, because things like finding matching non-federal grant dollars and or in-kind support, when we can have a place like this to discuss and learn from each other and brainstorm, bringing people together like this in these forums is something that can have even better things come out.
Would it be beneficial, or would there be interest if I and Felicity were to call a separate meeting that's just a farm to school brainstorming and planning session? It would just be a time and space, Zoom space, dedicated to you know, anyone who's thinking about applying for this grant or is interested could come, and we could share ideas and coordinate and figure things out. Is that something that people would want to participate in?
This is Keith. I think that's a great idea, and it really fits with our mission too, as an organization, to work together and do some of those things.
Yeah, this
Is
Jamie.
there
I think
some
there'd
sort of
be
a registry for farmers so that, you know, a school food service coordinator who's developing the menus and doing procurement would have access to, so that she or he would know various sources that are available. You know, is that, do we have that? Is there a registry of some sort where farmers can say, look, I'm growing potatoes this year and I would love to supply this school, you know?
We have many registries of different kinds.
We do.
And I think that's one of the coordinating issues. Jamie has the North Dakota Local Foods Map and the Farmers Market Guide that Department of Ag has put out. Farms is working on a database of experienced farmers who are teaching and sharing and hosting interns. But I don't know if there's a registry that's specific to institutional sales or school sales. Jamie, help me out here.
Okay, yep. So we did a couple of years ago, tried to, you know, when we asked those questions for the local foods directory, had that question on there as if there was, you know, interest in selling to schools. And it's like you said, Stephanie, it's one of the, you know, the many layers of lists that are certainly created. You know, where that sits right now, like I said, it would I mean, it's just needs to be updated, you know, something where, you know, when we look at our local foods map, you know, having that piece on there as part of that to just try to help schools out, you know, that's a good. So.
Okay.
Who do they call? Who do they go to? You know, I'm trying to find corn, for instance, you know, or.
Yeah. No, I that could be a good first discussion point for our breakout group to talk about, which I think I was just going to chime in and say I think that's a good idea for us to, you know, break out if people got projects in mind, you know, just to start, you know, fleshing out ideas, because that would we're a good group of minds to sort of bounce ideas off of. So.
And Paul, are you comfortable talking about the local foods app now, or do you want to not talk about that until it's further along?
We really haven't. We need to get started. I've approached a couple of local food markets who've agreed to help us out. We'd hope to get out and visit with people. I did make it to the Rugby Farmers Market, and I went to the Saturday morning one, which was the senior citizens food market, I guess. Anyway, so most of the people I talked to there were like, maybe not. But you know, the Wednesday, what I found out was the Wednesday afternoon one was where the younger crowd came, and I didn't have time to get to that. But so I'm going to have to go back and work with the vendors and get lists of regular customers and all of that. But we'll get that going. There was some talk here in this school thing about, you know, apps and things like that. I was trying to find when I was listening to y'all in the feasibility study that we did, one of the things that came up, we interviewed, let's see here, we had a total response rate of 11 out of 28 active schools in our region, and then follow-up interviews with 5 of them. And one of the things that comes up consistently from the standpoint of the schools is consistency and enough scheduling. And so some of the stuff that Mary hit on from the farmer perspective is actually more critical. You can imagine if you're a cook trying to plan a menu out 2 weeks from now, you better know what's coming at you. And so those are, to me, those are things that local farmers markets or groups of people that were cooperating would probably have a stronger chance of success in case somebody's having a disaster in their production one year, or even just timing. You know, if you got 5 producers, you've got an opportunity to spread out timing to everyone's benefit. And so from the institution standpoint, those are big things. And also the regulations, you know, knowing where it's coming from and that the producers are certified and all of that. Those stood out to me out of our survey. And so I was going to add for Jamie, when you do the training program for what you're going to do for the schools, it'd probably be good to incorporate a little bit of that at some point to tell the farmers what you told the schools. So that they know, what the schools know. And that's the other thing we did discover in this whole institutional buyer thing was a lot of uncertainty of what the regs are, even if it's been told once. Staffing changes, and it's just a constant program of educating people. So the farmers may be more steady than some of the staffing, and then throw in a superintendent change in on top of it, and now you've got all kinds of things going on. And just to add on the other side, so Janelle Anderson with Rustic Acres and Rolette just posted on Facebook that she had tons of carrots because one of her regular buyers, Ojibwe School, has been not meeting at school. And so she had planted all of these carrots, of course, with the idea that the school was going to buy them from her because they've been a regular customer, and now she's got a pile of carrots. So yeah, it's a interesting thing when you have, which a lot of other local food people found out, is when you have an institutional buyer and you have a lot of your production tied up in an institutional buyer and they go away, you've got a mess.
Yeah, what's your plan B?
Right.
You know, I got a little story about carrots, if I may just have a couple minutes. We are delivering some of our produce to the Bodno Public Schools, and I happened to be the deliverer, and so I was delivering carrots, and the carrots that we had were all different sizes, big ones and little ones. And so I went to the door, and I got the cook to come to the door because everything's locked up. And I showed her the carrots. And I said, I really apologize. They're all different sizes. And she goes, this makes me excited because I don't think a lot of our students have ever seen a carrot that's not as uniform as what we normally buy in a grocery store. And she was very excited about it. It was kind of interesting because I think that we get away from some of the way as producers we see them, and we try to make everything uniform. But I don't necessarily know that's important to those that are eating those foods either. So.
Oh, thank you, Keith. So we're getting close to 3 o'clock, and I'm going to say that we're going to skip over the growing season recap and rest and planning, but please send me send Felicity actually any stories of the growing season and ideas for the winter. We will resume our local food plan next month. We were going to talk about meat, which is, I'm sure, a big discussion. And we had just a couple member updates. Jacob Davis shared about the Turtle Mountain Virtual Food Festival, which is coming up, and more information about his project. Craig Burns said that the Friendship Garden and Community Orchard at the Ark in Grand Forks did get the trees and berries in the ground before the freeze. So thank you to those that shared information and support at the last meeting. And Farms has some educational workshops coming up, and those are all in the member updates document.
Also, just a quick update. We actually, I talked with the director of the film Gather. I don't know if people are familiar with the film Gather, but it was developed by the First Nations Development Institute and focuses on food sovereignty. It's just come out in the last 2 months. We're going to be screening that as part of the Food Harvest Festival, and actually having a panel discussion with the people in the that are in the film. So there will be a link if you register for it, where you could watch the film anytime during that week. So I could share that with the group once we make that available, if you'd like.
Please do. I would love to see that.
Is that
Yeah.
something that I could share out like on the college's, like our college's Facebook page too, for anybody to watch?
Yes, I think we're hoping to get around 500 people. And then as far as the panel discussion, yeah, we'd still want to get our primary community is Belcourt, Turtle Mountain, but we do want to extend it out to all of our partners within the state.
That'd be great, because I know I'd heard of that gather too, and I just haven't gotten it together to organize anything around that. So if I can kind of piggyback on yours and share the love, then that would be amazing.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
Great. Well, like I said, this was recorded, and the link to the member updates sheet is always at arms.org/NDLFDA. And like Karen said in the chat, this is why we meet. There were so many great connections today. So happy about today's meeting, and I will get the recording up. And thank you all so much for joining us today.